Hello everybody, I'm Kate Mosse. I'm a novelist, a playwright and non-fiction writer, and this video is all about my new novel, The Map of Bones, which is set partly in the 17th century, partly in the 19th century, at the very beginnings of southern Africa. And it's an adventure story. It's about women going in search of their family past. There's lots of fighting, there's lots of battles, there's lots of excitement, and it was a fantastic book to write. The Joubert family, who have now appeared over 300 years of history in 3 previous novels, although you can read The Map of Bones as a standalone. If you just want to start here, that will work out too. But we first meet the grande dame, if you like, of the Joubert family, who is Minou Joubert. And it starts as a Romeo and Juliet story. A Catholic girl and a Huguenot boy, that's to say the French Protestants, falling in love in 1562 on the eve of the wars of religion that would rip France in two. In The Map of Bones, we are there with Minou's descendants, an extraordinary woman, Louise Reydon-Joubert, who is a pirate in the 17th century and who has landed in southern Africa in 1688 and then has disappeared. Nobody knows what has happened to her. And nearly 200 years later, another descendant of the Joubert family, Isabelle Joubert-Lepard, arrives with a notebook and a pistol and a saddlebag and a horse, and she is going in search of her ancestors who have disappeared into the mists of time. It was very exciting working all this out. What I think I love about writing adventurous women is that women always were adventurous. Women are and always were strong. But quite often when you read books, you get the idea that it's all about the men doing the kind of swashbuckling and the sword fighting and the pistol shooting and the charging across the veldt to save the day. But actually, of course, women and men did all of these things together. And so what I enjoy is doing the research, finding out the history. There's not that much of the history, of course, in the very early times of 1688, when the earliest settlers, mostly from Holland, but also from Portugal, from France, from England, that of course had become Britain, arrived there. All of those parts of history, I love doing that, but I just love the idea that women make their own destinies. You know, this is a novel about women refusing to sit quietly in the corner and getting out there and being the women they want to be. When I was writing the previous book in this series, which again you can read as a standalone, it's called The Ghost Ship, there were real-life female pirates of the 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th century, and I used those as the basis for my lead character, Louise Joubert. With The Map of Bones, my lead character is Suzanne Joubert in the 17th century and then Isabelle Joubert-Lepard in the 19th century. And they were inspired less by one or two individuals, but more about the sort of women that were going out as explorers. There were so many women in the 19th century, extraordinary women like Isabella Bird, Isabella Bird, for example, who travelled all over the world. But there are many, many, many of them, lady explorers, as they were always described in the newspapers. And I had all of those at the back of my mind, and just thinking about what it would take to just turn up in a country, get on a horse and go. No smartphones, no maps, sometimes not even a compass, but just go and see where the journey would take you. And so I had those women at the back of my mind, and I hope you're going to fall in love with Suzanne and Isabelle much like I did when I was writing them. I'm not an adventurous woman at all, so I live vicariously through my characters. One of the questions people sometimes ask is, what would a Joubert woman being like today? Well, she wouldn't be me. I step foot outside of Sussex and I'm bitten by some hideous insect. I would be absolutely useless. But I think when you read the end of the book, when you read the epilogue, which is set in 1872, and it is a publishing party being held by Macmillan publishers, because they were the leading publisher in London at the time. And what I was doing there was imagining how a woman of adventurous spirit who wanted to be out there in the big landscape doing everything for herself, what she would be as time moved on. And she would have been a woman fighting for women's education. She would have been a woman fighting for the vote. She would have been a woman standing on the picket lines to protect women who were being ill-treated or were not being given the respect that they deserved. So what I think happens is that adventurous spirit never goes away, but it changes in the way that it shows itself. So I think in the epilogue, I just give you a little hint. about who they might have been, and you can imagine who they might be now. They might be you. One of the things that has been extraordinary about finishing this book is that it started back in 2012, the dreaming, the imagining this book, when I stood in a graveyard in South Africa in a place called Franschhoek, a book festival, looked up at the mountains, and I suddenly had this idea of the story I was going to write and the women I was going to write about, and it was going to be stories of women going back 1 generation, 2 generations, 5 generations, 10 generations. So you can imagine sitting at my computer, writing the final words when I have followed all of these women for more than 300 years. It was really emotional. You know, I had tears in my eyes as I was writing it. But then it felt properly finished. It was like a really big full stop. And I brought the book back together, not just with the 3 novels that have gone before, but also for those of you who have read my feminist history book, Warrior Queens and Quiet Revolutionaries, I bring in a couple of characters from that into the ending of this novel. So it feels like, well, 12 years of work actually is done, and that's why I can't wait to be out and about doing events and travelling all over the world to talk about the Map of Bones. And then when that's over, finish. And I've got a brilliant new series of books, and these will not be adventure stories, but they will be crime. So watch this space. So I really hope you've enjoyed the film. I hope I've whetted your appetite, and I can't wait to hear what you think about The Map of Bones. It's a book I loved writing, and I really hope you're going to enjoy reading it. It's out now.